A quick thank you to our sponsors for making this podcast possible. They keep this show free to listen to. Weeknight dinners always get me down. Trying to figure out a nutritious and delicious meal for my girls is such a chore. But with Knorr sides and bouillon, you can create amazing dinners with little to no effort. It's not a secret that we all love combo meals from our favorite fast food restaurants. They're delicious and affordable. What if there was a way to make mouth-watering and actually nutritious combo meals in your own kitchen? Introducing Knorr Taste Combos, a menu of delicious, affordable, and well-balanced meals that you can prepare at home in 30 minutes or less. Knorr is the not-so-secret ingredient from its bouillon to its rice and pasta sides that brings major flavor to delicious home-cooked meals. My personal favorites are the cheddar broccoli bowls and the chicken tacos. Knorr makes making dinner easy and delicious. Check out Knorr to bring more peace to your meal prep at Knorr.com. Thanks for joining me on the Peace and Parenting Podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Welcome back to the Peace and Parenting Podcast. I'm Michelle, and I am so glad you're here. Thank you for joining us. I want to talk today about the idea of using these tools, rather the tools of connection in the classroom. And a lot of people have been asking me about that. And I do have some ideas around it. And I do have extensive experience in schools. I worked in public school for 13 years. I started out in bilingual elementary school in inner city San Diego. And then I moved to kind of middle class high school in San Diego. And then eventually ended up in Santa Monica High School teaching Spanish. So I taught biliterate elementary, bilingual elementary, and then I ended up teaching Spanish 1, 2, and 3. And then at the end of my career, I was a high school counselor. So I do have quite a bit of experience. It's old experience. So it isn't, I stopped working in schools when Esme was born. So that was 2006. But I do have a lot of ideas around what's going on in our school system. So first and foremost, our school system is not serving its children. It's also not serving its teachers. It is very hard to be a teacher in this country. And it is very hard to teach in the environment that we ask teachers to teach in. Often we have really big classrooms. We don't have a lot of support. Teachers are not given enough downtime during their day. They're expected to teach to standards. They are really overworked. The principals are overworked, and the schools are really judged by, and I'm talking about California schools in general. That's where I've taught, but they're judged by their test scores. So principals pressure their teachers to really get their test scores up. And so that means they're really pushing academic rigor in an environment that doesn't really allow for an academic rigor because of the size of classrooms, because of the lack of materials, because of the lack of support, because of the lack of training, because of all the things that are going on in the school system. So it's a complex issue. And there's a lot of blame game going on in the country and the world. The teachers blame the parents, and the parents blame the teachers. And really, there's no sense in blaming one another, and it's no one person's fault that our school systems are failing. Our school systems are failing because of the bureaucracy. We have way more administrators than we need. We spend way too much money on people instead of on the kids. We spend way too much money on outdated curriculums that cost thousands and thousands of dollars, whereas we could be spending our money helping our teachers be better trained, helping our administrators be better trained, and lowering our class size and getting kids the support they need. Now, in teacher training, what isn't really present is the idea of connection. We are still taught as teachers to use rewards and punishments, which is a very antiquated way to motivate kids' behavior. And we know that. And that's why we don't use it in connective parenting. But it is part of the teacher curriculum. Now, some curriculums are starting to change a little bit. but it's still very behavior modification focused. So, meaning trying to get the child's behavior to change through the ways in which we treat them. But it isn't focused on the idea of creating relationship. And what we see with kids in families, and what's also true in schools, and you'll think about it like, who did you gravitate toward as a kid in your schools? Which teachers did you like? Which administrators did you like? Which coaches did you like? And I know for me, and I know for my own kids too, and I hear it all the time, we really gravitated towards teachers and administrators and coaches and mentors who were deeply vested in the relationship, right? And we get a lot of backlash like, well, you can't be their friend. You can't be that close to them. You have to toe the line. You have to be strong. You have to have boundaries. You have to have limits. You have to, punish them where you need to. I don't agree with any of that, most especially in these settings, in the teacher or the coaching setting. I really do believe that having the relationship is much more valuable than anything else. And I'll say that I had really good relationships with my students, and I still am friends with my students who are now having kids of their own. And I look fondly on those years because that's really what I did. Is I cultivated relationships with these kids where I was vested in them. I knew what sports they were in. I would go to their games. I would walk in their graduation with them. Was invited to their homes. I was deeply invested in them as people, and they knew that. And so when kids feel that, either in the classroom or at home, when kids feel that you're invested in them, they also want to invest in you. So your behavior issues decrease tremendously. I remember having a principal be very hands-on and knew everyone's name and high fives in the courtyard and was, really cool. And he, I don't think, experienced half the behavior issues that I think a principal who was very strict and stern and didn't really connect with the kids. So first and foremost, that is what is most important in classrooms. But our teachers are not given that information. They're not told to cultivate relationships. They're not told to, that is the best way to motivate behavior. Some of them do it naturally because that's who they are and that's who they want to be. And I think that's who I was because I didn't have the best experience in high school. I mean, I didn't really have great teachers. I had maybe one who I felt close to, but had I felt close to them all, I think I would have done a lot better because I would have been more invested in the curriculum. I would have been more invested in the teacher themselves. And so when you're invested in that person, you don't want to disappoint them, right? You'd like to do well on the test because you want to show them how smart you are, or you want to have them know that you care about their work as well. And so I think if we were to change anything in teacher training curriculum certification, I think that it would include really teaching teachers how to work on relationship. And what does that look like? And it looks different for every age group, right? For the kindergarten classroom, it might be more embedded in the curriculum, right? We might have more circle time and we might share feelings more. We might sit in circle and talk about how everyone's doing today. We might, really cultivate relationship and community in our classroom, more in the kindergarten classroom than we do in, the 9 through 12 classroom. And so I think it is more present in elementary school. But as soon as we get kids in desks, as soon as we expect them to start reading, which for most kids, it's as early as first grade, things change. It becomes way more focused on scholastics and way more focused on getting kids to sit in chairs. And 7-year-olds don't want to sit in chairs all day. And so that's another big flaw of our school system is that we expect little tiny kids to sit in chairs all day and absorb information. How can we possibly believe that it is effective to have a child try to learn things all day long for 6 or 7 hours. That's insane. We don't have that kind of attention span as adults. What if you were asked to go learn for 6 or 7 hours every single day for an entire year? That sounds horrendous to me. Like even now I'm doing a training, and if I do that training for more than an hour a day, I'm exhausted. It's a lot. Can you imagine doing 6 or 7 or even 5 hours of rigorous work, sitting in a chair as a 7-year-old, and then being sent home with homework that you have to do, that you have to return, that you have to go home and also work on? That's BS as far as I'm concerned. And no wonder it doesn't work. It makes zero sense. And I think that's why so many people have left the school system and are homeschooling, because the system's broken and the methodology is, everything about it is broken. But I just want us to deeply think about that part, because there's many pieces of this school system that can't be fixed unless, the basic structure is fixed. And I don't think that's happening anytime soon. We're going to take a break from our show to hear from our sponsors. Without their sponsorship, I wouldn't be able to bring you this incredible show free of charge. So I'll see you back in a few minutes. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/peace and get on your way to being your best self. How do you make sure you're coming to parenting with your best self? What's one part of your weekly routine you won't miss no matter what? For me in the past, and for sure now as the kids get older, it's therapy. Therapy has been a large part of my growth and transformation as a mom. And I owe so much of my own change to the work I've done over the years in therapy. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a really short questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Visit betterhelp.com/peace today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/peace. I'm excited to tell you all about FeatherSnap Scout Smart Bird Feeder, a great example of how technology can connect people with nature in really cool ways. I don't know if you know, but I'm from Oregon, and in our house, there are tons of birds. So this Wi-Fi-enabled smart feeder combines state-of-the-art camera and app tech with an age-old pursuit, birdwatching. The feeder includes a high-end camera that captures crisp 4-megapixel photos and 1080p video of your feathered visitors. Then use the FeatherSnap app expert-trained AI identification model to nail down the species and categories the birds you see. I cannot wait to get the bald eagle on this camera. Tech that truly helps you tune into the world around you. Check them out today at feathersnapcam.com. That's feathersnapcam.com. Okay, back to the show. So when the community piece stops in kindergarten and we enter first grade, and we still have some of that. And first graders are so cute. I taught kindergarten and I taught second grade. I never taught first grade, but first graders are so sweet. They love their teachers. They want to learn. They want to be there. They want to please. But it becomes a lot for them. And we ask a lot of these little kids to sit and learn and try to comprehend and do. And they, for the most part, want to please us. Also, the classrooms are too big, right? And we aren't given assistants. I had an assistant, I had an aide in kindergarten, and I was like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me as a teacher. I needed that. It was my first year teaching, and she ran the classroom, honestly, more than I did. She had been an assistant in elementary school for 20 years. And she ran that classroom. She knew how to get things done. And she was so loving and so kind and connected so well with those kids. And they did really well because of her. And shout out to Mrs. Cornejo, wherever she is right now, because she made my first year teaching manageable. So, I think there's a lot going on in the classroom, right? We've got big classrooms, and then we have that big focus happening in first grade. They got to learn to read. They've got to learn to add and subtract. They really have to like perform because they're going to be taking standardized testing. And so the pressure becomes insurmountable for the teachers, and they ooze that pressure out onto the kids. So when you have a kid who misbehaves in a classroom where you're constantly worried that you need to get the curriculum done and that you need to have your kids perform on the test, you get into fight, flight, or freeze because you're worried. You're worried about your job. You're worried about the marks that your kids will get. You're worried about what your principal might say, and you're worried about not getting through the curriculum. And teachers are very conscientious, incredible people. They come to this profession because they love kids and they love the idea of learning, and they are there to really do good in this world. And so, of course, when they are told that they have to perform and that their kids have to perform, they want to do that. And sometimes that pressure is really hard and doesn't make a conducive place for learning. And then also, if you're worried about that, how can you possibly be worried about or focused on relationship and connection? Because you got to just get it done. So it's easier to reward or punish the behavior that you see because you just have to get your to-do list done. Now, this really mimics and mirrors parenting because we too, as parents, feel the same thing. We got to get that list done. We got to get all these to-do things because we have to be productive in society. We have to have the clean house. And we have to have kids and activities. And I've talked about it over and over again that we get sucked in to all these pressures. And so do our sweet teachers. So there's no blame for our sweet teachers because they don't have the environment that allows them to lean into connection, and they can't create it like we can in parenting. In parenting, we get to make choices. Like, I'm not going to sign up for 65 activities. I'm not going to worry about being on time today. I'm not going to pressure my kids to have, a sport and a instrument and a X, Y, and Z. But when you're the teacher, you can't. So our school system, again, is a mess and doesn't lend itself to connection. However, there are some things that I think our teachers can do now. I don't think they're going to, necessarily fix everything, but there are a few things that I think are really important. And I think building community and putting the curriculum on the back burner some of the time, once a week or whatever it is, and not worrying about getting through the curriculum so much, knowing that the curriculum will be better absorbed and better taught and better learned when we have kids who are endeared to us. So really changing the mindset around teaching and saying, you know what? My curriculum is important, but it's not the most important thing that I'm doing here. The most important thing that I'm doing here is cultivating relationships with these kids. And many of these kids don't have that connection piece at home, depending on where you teach, depending on, the socioeconomics, depending on all kinds of things, but they might not have that connection at home. This might be the only place they get this deep connection. So really saying to myself as a teacher, if I had to do it over again, this is a connection building activity that we're doing. We're really cultivating, community. And you can't just do it the first 2 weeks of school. It has to be this ongoing process. So I think that's really part of it, is building community pieces into the curriculum and taking days off of learning the curriculum and taking many days off learning the curriculum. And not trying to rush through it or get through it or make sure. I know for like Spanish 1, I was like always worried. I got to get through the whole book because they're going to go to Spanish 2 and they have to know Spanish 2. And Mr. Lopez is across the hall from me and he's an incredible teacher. And if they're not ready for Spanish 2, I'm going to be in big trouble. And taking that pressure off of myself and really leaning into connection much of the time or some of the time would have really helped me. I think also another tool is play. Using play as a learning tool can be super effective in the classroom. Now, again, this only works if you've already created community, if you have kids who are bought into you, if you're not using punishments and rewards. Like, you have to set up the environment correctly or play won't work. But I know for me, I used to like to be the bumbling idiot, like, como se dice, orange. and, really trying to lean into like being silly in the classroom and being like, no, 6 + 4 is 12, right? And they would say, no, Miss Kenny, that's not right. And I'd say, oh, I don't know what it is. Can somebody come up here and show me? And really having them, lead and being funny about it and really leaning into play as a way to teach. And so I think if you think about your lessons and you don't just plow through them in a worksheet, regurgitation way. And many teachers don't. But if we use play to get there, if we use play in our lessons, if we're silly, if we're fun, if we're spontaneous. I mean, I remember also I had this chemistry teacher and he used to get on top of the table and he used to like pretend he was like combusting and he was super silly and it was beautiful and it was good for us because we needed that. We had so many serious teachers. So using play as a tool in the classroom is what, and some people already do it. Some teachers already do it organically. For those of us who don't, it's a good thing to keep in your back pocket. Um, you know, intervening with behavior issues using connection as opposed to using punitive measures. So instead of going to put your name on the board, write a check, take a body break, get a timeout, you're going to lose your recess, you're going to lose your field trip. I mean, I've heard teachers really take away everything. By the way, in some places it's illegal to take away recess. It's illegal to take away field trips. Like you can't do those things. And I think us teachers get frustrated and we don't know what else to do. It's just like us parents, we get frustrated and we're taking the phone, we're taking, the play date, we're taking the free time away from the child because we don't know what else to do either. And it's equally as detrimental in parenting as it is in teaching. So I think getting away from those things creates a safer, calmer environment. And instead of using punitive measures, I think we have to use connection. So if you see a child who is disconnected and doing the wrong thing, bothering their neighbor, keeps poking at their neighbor, throwing papers at their neighbor, like, can't keep their hands to themselves. It's like the squirrely second grader. Can you get in there with connection? Oh, little kids who are bothering their neighbor are going to have to come be my helper. I need a helper. Can you use connection? Can you pull that child in? Can you get them in with you as opposed to being like, stop bothering your neighbor. You can't do that. If you do it one more time, you're going to be sitting in for recess and just the threats that come and or bribes. We have a lot of classrooms that are set up with point systems. And if you do X, Y, and Z, if you sit in your seat nicely, you're going to get a point. If you come to the carpet quickly, you're going to get a point. If you line up for recess, you get a point. If you stop talking, you get a point. And if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm going to take a point from you. And these point systems they're just punishments in disguise. And so just getting rid of those point systems too, and really leaning into connection. And teachers will say, well, it takes too long. Yep, it does take too long. It absolutely takes too long. But guess what? If you lean into it enough, pretty soon you don't have behavior issues. And then you have spent the time, wisely, right? You've gotten this kid more regulated, feeling better, and you don't have him all year driving you bananas because he feels disconnected in the classroom. And it takes a long time. And sometimes we have to take a break from the curriculum. Sometimes we have to put the learning on the back burner. Sometimes we have to focus on one kid for a minute or 2 or 5 because it will be for the betterment of the classroom. We do the same thing in parenting, right? We have the kid who's dysregulated and he's constantly picking on his baby sister, Instead of protecting the baby sister and punishing the child, we get the child to feel better so he doesn't want to pick on his baby sister. It's a holistic approach. It's a roots approach. I met with a client today and I told her it's approach where like you want to water the roots as opposed to, clearing out the falling leaves. The falling leaves are just the symptom. And if we can keep clearing out the falling leaves forever, but the leaves are going to keep falling unless we water the plant. And so we've got to water these relationships with these kids, either in the home or in the classroom. And when we do that, we get a more vibrant garden, right? We get a garden that grows, that does well. And when we just focus on picking up the leaves, we'll just spend all year picking up the leaves. and it's exhausting. So really coming to, off-track behaviors with connection can be super helpful in the classroom. The other thing, and this is kind of the last thing that I'll talk about for now, but the other thing is not being triggered by our students' behavior also totally correlates with parenting, right? Don't be triggered by our kids' behavior. When we're triggered by our students' behavior, it pushes us into a place where we might do things that we regret, or we might do things that don't make sense, or might do things that are unkind, like yelling, snapping, or putting in timeout, or putting in the corner, or putting in a body break, or whatever the thing is. But when we look at our child's behavior or our student's behavior and say, that's their behavior and it is not a personal attack against me or anyone else in the classroom, it is their behavior and it just indicates to us that they're not doing well. And then if they're not doing well, how can we help them do better? How can we move connection into that child's world for a moment? How can we shift things and help them, recover from that moment of dysregulation and disconnection, as opposed to, taking it personally and then responding with something that isn't going to promote connection. So I hope that makes sense. I think it's a really hard thing also to not take it personally, because likely our own teachers took it personally. Our own parents took it personally. The whole world takes a child's behavior personally. So to make that mindset shift is very difficult, but I think it is so profound. So anyways, I hope that this was helpful. Thank you so much for joining me on the Peace and Parenting podcast. If you feel the urge to leave us a review, I would be so grateful. I love reading them. In fact, I'm going to go read some right now because it makes me feel good. On Apple iTunes, that would be lovely, or a rating on anywhere else. I would be so grateful. So thank you very much for joining me, and I will be here next time.